Hi, welcome to another Digital Photo Mentor video. Today I'm going to walk you through Luminar 2018. You might be looking for something to replace or as an alternative to Lightroom after Adobe's recent news. So stay tuned, let's have a look inside Luminar. Okay, so we're inside Luminar now, and I've opened an image that I took recently in the Okanagan Valley. I wasn't extremely happy with how it came out because it doesn't have the mood that I wanted that I felt when I was on the scene. So let's see if we can recreate some of the feeling that I had when I shot it. Okay, so if you're new to Luminar, I'm just going to do a really quick overview. If you are new to processing period, I'll show you a really quick way to get started with Luminar that's not too overwhelming. So let's get started with presets first of all. These little thumbnails down at the bottom are really great for just kind of playing around. If you click on any of them, they will apply some of Luminar's filters. Okay, so Luminar works in terms of all their settings are called filters. Okay, and all a preset is a combination of different filters applied for you. Okay, so if you're happy with one, if you find one you like, you can just click on it and say you're done. Okay, now say that one's a little bit overdone because I'm not quite happy with the saturation on that. You can then either dial it back using the slider, okay, or you can change the sliders inside of the filters. Okay, so you can just change the saturation. Easy enough. All right. Let's go back to this other one here. If you are just starting, so that's a good way to start with presets. There's another one called Workspace, Quick and Awesome. Okay, so Workspace is also another combination of filters. Okay, so I'm going to choose Quick and Awesome. So it gives you 3 filters to work with. The Accent AI, which basically gives you a boost of shadows and pulls your highlights down at the same time. Kind of like an HDR filter on steroids. You want to be careful not to go too far with it. Okay. And we definitely want to make sure we don't go too far with saturation. If anything, I'm going to go on the minus side and a little bit of clarity. So if you want to do really quick and dirty editing and you don't want to muck around too much, you could be done right there. Okay, if you're happy with that, save it and move on to the next image. Okay. If you're a person who wants to do a bit more and be a little bit more creative, then what I would suggest is picking your own filters and doing one by one. So first thing I'm going to do is actually apply the raw filter, which is brand new in Luminar 2018. Okay, if you've used Lightroom in the past or Photoshop, Adobe Camera Raw, the sliders are going to be very similar. Okay, so it's the same kind of sliders that you have in the basic processing panel in Lightroom. Okay, so you could pull the highlights and shadows and so on. Okay, and I might even do this one in combination with that fancy AI filter. Okay, that works well together. Okay, so again, if you're happy with that, call it a day and move on. It also gives you under the raw, you notice there's a couple of new tabs. It allows you to do chromatic aberration corrections. There's a little bit of yellow in this one, I think. What chromatic aberration is that the colors and the lens is not focusing all 3 colors in the same place, the red, green, blue, and it ends up looking sort of like a double image. Okay, let me just take it away again. So you see this sort of outline around the leaf here, right? That's chromatic aberration. So I pulled that up to about 30. It looked yellow to me, so that's why I went to the yellow direction. And now it looks like there's less of a double image. Okay. You can also do transform. If you're shooting a building, you can correct distortion with it. Okay, you can correct tilting buildings and so on. I'm not going to do that here because I don't have any buildings to correct, but it's there if you wish to use it. Okay, so let's see a before and after. You have a couple of options, the little eyeball, or you can click on your before and after slider. So it's better, it's got more detail, but it still doesn't have sort of that warm, fuzzy feeling that I got from the Wine Valley. This is where the power of Luminar comes in, is it allows you to play, right? So if I'm happy with my basic raw file the way it is, I'm now going to add a new layer, okay, adjustment layer, which allows me to edit non-destructively, okay? Keep in mind that I'm working on a raw file, so all of this is non-destructive. I'm going to save out a Luminar file with the layers and the history intact, so I can come back to this at any time and undo or change any of it. It's really great. Okay, so the next thing I'm going to apply, let me just check my checklist here, is I'm going to apply a polarizer. Okay, so you'll notice that some of these are orange. I've just added them to my favorites. Okay, so I can see my favorites list that way. Okay, so I'm going to add the polarizing filter. I'm going to add soft glow. I'm going to add color contrast, and I'm going to leave this Sunrays one for last because I want to surprise you with that. Okay, so you can add any of the filters that you use a lot into your favorites, and then it's easier to find them like I just did. Okay, so these ones are all set to 0 as a default. So polarizing filter works as expected. It's going to darken the sky. Okay, again, apply subtly. Don't go too far because it's going to look too processed, too over the top. Okay, that looks pretty good. Okay, color contrast is a really neat thing. What it does is it applies contrast. I'm going to go all the way to this end so you can see what it's doing to a particular color in the image. So as you rotate through hue, it applies contrast to different hues, right? Look at the interesting things that are happening here. Obviously, we're not going to go to this degree, right? But if you want to add contrast into certain areas, right, look at the glow that's happening on the leaves there, right, versus that. So I got more glow sort of happening on the leaves. That's not too bad. Okay, but what if I'm not sort of, it's too much. I want to fade it out a little bit. Not a problem. Okay, so I can change the blending mode of this filter. I can mask it out, certain areas. Let's try lighten. Not bad. Let's see that on and off. And literally this is my process. Just play with the different settings, see what each one does, and if you're happy with it. Okay. I think we're going to go with lighten. And we're going to scale it back a little bit. Again, just keep it subtle. But it's giving me more of that sort of glow, feeling like the sun is warming these leaves. Okay. Now I'm going to add the sun rays, and I'm going to leave the soft glow for last. So Sunrays is a really cool, brand new to Luminar 2018 filter. Okay. What it does is applies a sunburst for you. Okay. I have an article on making sunbursts. I'm going to share the link if you want to create that in camera, but you can't always get one. So if you want to have a sunburst in your image, I'm just going to move it up here. Now notice that it actually put the sun in a pretty good place, right? The shadows are falling here, which means the sun is behind the vines on the left. So it put the sun back here, almost kind of hiding behind the trees. And notice as I move it, it knows that this is a dark object and the sun wouldn't come through there. So the sun is only coming through. Look at that. How cool is that? I mean, obviously the sun is not going to come from down there, right? But if it was, that makes a pretty cool effect. So you can move the sun burst where you want it, right? That's the first thing. You can change the strength and the amount. It's totally flexible as to the number of rays coming out of the sun and so on. This is a really cool filter. I've applied this to a few images now, and I could see myself actually getting carried away and applying it to everything. So don't go that far. But use it sparingly, and I find that if you want to, it's giving me more of that warm feeling that I was looking for with this image. So I can play with it until I'm happy with the warmth, the length of the sun rays. I can increase the glow of the sun or the warmth of the sun itself. Let's just see what it's doing. Right? I like it. Okay, and then the last one we didn't turn on yet is the soft glow, which is going to then add a soft glow to that sun. So I'm going to keep it slightly subtle again. And I like to play with the sliders either way, all 100%, see what they're doing. Okay. Bring it down a little bit. And I might add one more, which is also in my favorites, and that's called Image Radiance. It gives another type of glow, but it gives more overall. So the soft glow mostly applies just to the highlights, Image radiance is sort of applies everywhere. And if you go too far, I find that it just starts to look like mush, right? But it does a really nice kind of job on certain areas. And if I want to have that really warm feeling that I was talking about earlier and the moody image, it's actually doing a really nice job here. Okay? So let's do a before and after now. Big difference, right? So it's really taken this image to the next level. I find that you can go really too far easily with some of the sliders and filters inside of Luminar, but I like the ability to, take extremes and then scale it back. So they give you the option of going as far as you want, but you need to have some restraint and go subtle, right? So I hope that gives you a good idea of what is inside of Luminar and some of the things that you can do to further customize any of the filters that you've applied. You can add a mask onto an individual filter. For example, if I want to put the sun down here and it's coming across the sign, and maybe I don't want it to be across the sign. Let's just randomize that a little bit. Let's say I don't want it applying on the sign. Okay, so I can mask out with a brush, and we'll use erase, yes. Okay, so I can mask out the sign, so I can make sure that it's not getting any flare, okay? Just like that. So then no matter how I apply these rays, it's not going to apply to the sign. Okay. Paint a little bit more. You get the idea. Okay. You can also change the opacity of the layer. So we can say, well, we like all those effects, but let's just scale it down a little bit. Okay. So it scales everything. So what I would recommend is Luminar is a great option if you're already using Lightroom. It works as a plugin. If you're going to stay with Lightroom Classic, you can continue to use Lightroom Classic and add Luminar as a plugin. If you are using Lightroom and you want to get out of the subscription model, I would suggest it's a good alternative. If you are not using any processing software currently, I would also suggest that it's a good choice for you because it can be as simple as a couple of clicks or as complex as masking and layers. Okay? But it's really easy to use and get started if you're a newbie right from opening the file for the first time. Okay? So Luminar has lots of applications for pretty much anybody, and as I've said before, I actually enjoy it a lot more than I anticipated, and some things like this Sunrays filter took me by surprise today when I first tried it out, and I put it on about 4 or 5 different images, including a night image. I'll share that with you in the article below. So I got carried away. Try not to do that, but have some fun. And that's the whole thing about image processing. For me, it's the next fun stage. I get to take the images in the field, and then I get to come back to my office and create a vision of how I felt that image when I took it. And this image on the screen now is closer to what I saw in the field. So I hope that you can take your images to the next level and make your visions a reality. Give Luminar a try, and I hope you enjoy it. Take care. We'll talk to you soon.